What's going on, guys? Black Violin here, and today we are going to be going over a couple tips and guides to Arena. So, the first thing I want to go over is the actual metas. Currently, I do believe there are three metas in Arena that you should know about. These are not confirmed nor disconfirmed, they are just my personal outlook on what I think the current metas are. So the first one is actually going to be a speed meta. The reason I say it's a speed meta in possibly in arena is because the majority of the players that I know personally have come from playing Summoner's War. And in Summoner's War, speed is the current meta in the arena of Summoner's War. So I think it has been migrating over from Summoner's War to War Crown. I personally run my supports really fast. My fairy and Faria are on a speed build because I really want them going and getting their turns as fast as possible. And I also have a couple of my other units I use in Arena on a speed focus kind of build, but I put more focus in other things on them instead of just speed alone. But there are some very fast units in Arena. I've noticed some Dark Lyelas that are extremely fast, and it's just kind of crazy seeing some of these units, just how fast they've been built. Because, like I said, my fairy is pretty fast. So when she is outsped, then I'm pretty confident with thinking that their entire team's going to be speed built because they have been transferring their arena knowledge from Summoner's War into War Crown Arena. So, is a speed meta confirmed? Um, with this particular one, I can definitely say that yes, speed is a big role in Arena. You definitely want speed on your units for your Arena team. It's not absolutely necessary for lower Arena ranks, but the higher you get up, the more you will probably see speed built units. And then the second one is shield units. Are shield units becoming a meta in War Crown? As you can see, commonly seen units are Arendelle, Faria, Callius, and some of these units do shield either themselves or others. For example, the Light Callius is probably the most common unit I see in Arena. He does the AoE team shield for a percentage of his health. And the same thing with Faria. She has a passive shield for herself that is a percentage of her HP as well. And then a 2-turn invincibility if you're running the Dark Faria. I'm not sure if any of the other Farias have it, but I do believe there are two of them that have the invincibility skill. It may be more, I'm not exactly sure, but that is also another type of shield. Callius. There are Callius that have a third skill that once it's used, they get a shield for 2 turns. That's 30% of their magic attack. So these are some really common units I have been seeing in Arena. So is shields? Are shield units going to be part of the Arena meta? Once again, I do think so. Like I said, these are really common units to see. Especially Arendelle. It's very rare not to see Arendelle on somebody's team for Arena. And Callius he's not in there as much as Arendelle, but he's still pretty common. Valfaria is probably the least common of these three particular units. Um, but it's definitely been in there quite a bit, and I'm mostly saying that these shield units are in there because exactly of that shield. Because that shield is pretty much like extra HP on your unit. So I do believe that there is also a shield meta in Arena. Now the third one is going to be a mage meta. Since the release of the Zillion Hero Advent Dungeon, many people have been building mages. Has this begun to influence the arena teams? Um, I believe that it has because Zillion is a natural 4-star monster. Everybody's been farming Zillion like crazy to skill her up for the 3-star wanted bosses because she's really good going against Ibanu and Lycan. So she has migrated also from being a 3-star wanted boss killer to a unit you will commonly see in Arena. Now, the reason that she's so common in Arena is because she's going to be the most common 4-star monster that is fully skilled up. Therefore, she is a very powerful monster in Arena. I have seen Zillions just go crazy with some of the damage they do. However, her HP doesn't seem to be that great, so she is easy to take down. But also because of this the Zero Advent Zillion Hero Advent Dungeon, the Callius was released, the natural 5-star mage, and you will see a lot of Callius in Arena as well. I personally run 2 Callius in my team. I do not run a Zillion because she's a single target nuker, and I actually prefer more of a AoE nuker because it helps me just deal more damage overall to their team. So I definitely do think there is a mage meta currently going on in Arena. Uh, but one thing I do want to point out is that this can quickly change. With the next Hero Advent Dungeon, depending on who it is and what their unit type is, if it is a DPS or an assassin or even a ranged unit, then this can really shift people away from trying to use mages in Arena. Because all three of those units deal physical damage, and them being able to just skill farm that physical attack unit is going to really shift the arena advantage that Zillion has, because she would no longer be the top unit. Because for example, if it's a ranged unit or a DPS unit, they're going to be taking reduced damage from a Zillion unit while dealing increased damage to her. So this meta, while it's currently going on, I do believe it can switch overnight pretty much whenever they decide to release the next Advent Dungeon. It is currently in there, but I do not think it is as major as the speed meta or the shield meta that has been influencing Arena as well. So another couple things I want to go over are a couple tips for Arena. First off, it's going to be knowledge is power, and what I mean by knowledge is power is this right here. These are what I call the books of knowledge and power, because every day since I've been playing, I've been kind of going through these common and special books, looking at the heroes, learning what these heroes do. That way I have the knowledge of what they're capable of doing, and that knowledge gives me an advantage in Arena, because I can be like, okay, this guy is running this kind of team. Uh, so this is how I'm going to be able to counter it. This is who's going to be my biggest threat and stuff like that. So that knowledge of what my opponent's team is capable of gives me a powerful advantage because I know how I can prepare for it. I know who's my biggest threat, and I know how I will be able to counter it with whatever team I'm running. Such as if my current team, if you've been watching some of my arena teams, I run a shield and a healed team with two Callius running my nukes. So if they're running a double DPS team, then I know that running two mages really isn't going to be very beneficial for me because those two DPS are just going to be able to rip right through them. So I would probably switch out one of my mages for another DPS or another tank unit. But those are just a couple of things when it comes to knowing your enemies, why it's so beneficial. Another thing that you would like to do when you are picking your team for arena, you really want to cover all the class roles. There are currently 6 classes in War Crown, but you pick only 5 heroes. So ideally, the most roundabout team is going to be 1 hero of each class, but not exactly. Um, you really don't need to run double mage or double support or anything like that. The safest team is going to be like a tank, DPS, mage support, and then maybe a actual healer support. That's going to be your like basic team. If you're not running a DPS, you're of course going to want to cover that role with another physical striker, such as a ranged unit or assassin. If you're not running a tank, you want to run another DPS because they are slightly tankier. If you're not running supports, you'll want to run mages because you want to have like each of these roles covered because each class role does have a specific purpose in arena. Another thing is you want to know how to counter these specific enemy units you will be going against. I do have a video that goes over what kind of hero unit counters another type of hero unit. I'm actually going to link it in this video somewhere around this part so that you can, if you have not seen it, you can go into it. It is a little long, but it's very detailed. Since I did the work on it and looked into what kind of hero counters other heroes, it has helped me in an extreme bit of times. Like, it has helped me so much, especially in arena, because I know like who's gonna take what type of damage, who's gonna resist this type of damage, and stuff like that. And that's really effective knowing that type of information, and it's really going to be able to help you influence the battle and know like what you need to do and how you're going to be able to counter your enemies. Another thing is you don't want to be a statue. What I mean by being a statue is it's mainly focused towards your ranged units, your mage units, your supports, and your assassins. Now these 4 classes are meant to be constantly moving and trying to get like an advantage point. Mainly your assassin and range and mage are trying to get the advantage point, like going for the higher elevation when they can take it. Your assassin's going to be on the move constantly, hopefully doing like a hit and run type thing, just going all over the board and just dealing damage wherever she can or he can. The only unit you actually want to play like statue with, and not even really them, is going to be your tanks or your DPS sub tank, because they are there literally to tie up a unit if they possibly can, and make them like stay away from your other units. So they are the only two that really need to be kind of like a statue, but not really. Like, they still need to be moving around, shifting for that better vantage point, and trying to get in the way of other units to help protect your squishier units. But other than that, do not just have your units stand there and like try to go toe to toe with another unit. They constantly should be shifting around so you can get better advantages. The next one is actually going to be focusing your attacks. What I mean by focusing your attacks is, of course, like not going one versus one with heroes. Like, your DPS shouldn't be going one on one with the enemy's DPS. Your tank shouldn't be trying to go one on one with the support they're trying to kill or anything like that. Uh, what you actually want to do is determine who is going to be the biggest threat to you on your enemy's team, and focus all of your damage and all of your skills into that single unit. If you can kill that unit, the faster you can kill that threat to your team, the better advantage you're going to have, because you're going to be single focusing on that guy, taking them down quickly, and then you're like, okay, this threat's gone. Who is my next threat? Who do I need to take out? You really need to determine that threat factor when it comes to your opponent. So focusing your attacks on that threat is really going to press the advantage for you, because like I said, you're going to just take them out within a couple turns, hopefully, and then it's just going to ease the pressure off of you. If you're trying to spread out the damage, it's mostly going to actually be with your AoEs, because of course with your AoE type units, you want to go for the best damage capabilities you can get from them. Therefore, like hitting multiple units with your AoEs and kind of spreading the damage out with that. But like with their basic attacks or their single target attacks, you really want to still keep that focus on your main threat. So a couple other things I want to talk about is actually controlling the battlefield, because if you can control the field, you can control the battle. So tanks and DPS should control the midfield. What I mean by the midfield is the center of the arena between the two trenches that are on either side of the field. They should be controlling that center part as much as possible, because that's where most of the fighting is going to actually be going on. So if your tanks and your DPS are the ones controlling that area, you have the upper hand in that particular battle. Now your mages and your ranged units really need to be trying to control the sides, because they are the range. You want them going for that upper advantage of elevation and everything. So taking them to a particular side, either the left side or the right side. You really don't want one on the left or one on the right. That's actually not a good idea to have them separated like that, because then they are easy targets for DPS units to go just jump up there real quick and take them out, and be able to jump back down into the midfield. So ideally, you want to have your ranged and your mages in either the sides on a particular side, such as only the left side or only the right side, or you can also keep them in the backfield. But in the backfield, they're not going to be as effective as they will be on a side support or a side control. With your supports, You want them controlling your backfield, not and what I mean by the backfield of the course is going to be pretty much the starting area where you started at. That is your backfield. You want them controlling the backfield because it keeps them safely out of range from DPS units and ranged units for the most part. Like I said earlier, you do want to keep these units moving around for the better advantage. Uh, so you're going to have them pretty much staying behind your DPS units and your tanks. You do not want them being in the midfield at all. If you put them in midfield, then it's really going to put them at a disadvantage because their supports, while they're like mostly built on an HP build, they will be pretty squishy nonetheless, especially against a DPS unit or a tank or a ranged unit, because they're going to be taking a lot of increased damage from those three units, especially assassins. If an assassin gets up on your support, you can pretty much say goodbye to that support if that assassin is well built. Now, assassins are the only unit that can play all of the field by using their mobility. Assassins have the highest mobility in the game currently. So with this mobility, you really want to take advantage of it by having them being actually the last unit on your team to enter the field of the battlefield. Um, so while you want them to actually be really fast, uh, you also want them to be very crit heavy. So when they go in, they're able to like pick targets for assassination. I mean, they're called assassins for a reason. They're the units that are like, okay, this enemy unit is almost dead. I'm gonna just run in there with my assassin and kill him straight off before he has a chance to heal. That's what you want your assassins doing. Do not try to go head on head with assassins on melee units such as DPS or tanks because they do take increased physical damage. So while they're dealing physical damage, they're mostly actually used for getting into the enemy's backline and taking out their supports and mages. So you really want your assassin, like I said, being the last to enter the field. That way, you know you've already tied up. You already tied up all the DPS and tanks that your enemy is using with your own DPS and tanks, and it gives your assassin kind of like free reign to bypass them and get into your enemy's back line and start just nuking down those supports and mages that they're trying to protect back there. So that's a really good strategy to use with assassins. Is pretty much like a hit and run type thing. You want them to take out them targets as fast as you can, but then their next turn they need to be moving to a safer position, because what it's going to do if you use this strategy, it's going to help you keep your assassin alive because they are the squishiest units in the game. It will help them keep them alive though. So, but it also is going to allow them more chances to recharge their skills from cooldown and being able to pull off those heavy strikes again. So, playing hit and run with assassins is going to be the best thing you can ever do with them. Now, lastly, I do want to go over some things you do not want to do. One of the things that you do not want to do, first off, do not buff on first turns. As you can see on the right side of the scale, I have a small clip of an Arendelle on the top and a small clip of a fairy on the bottom. Both of them were my the enemy units that I was going against, and I took these clips because they decided to buff on the first turn. Now, the reason that this is actually not a good idea is because it takes literally the third turn before you are even entering battle. So with Arendelle Shield, it's only a 2-turn buff. So if you buff with Arendelle on the first turn, uh, if your units are faster than the enemy's units, then they're literally going to lose that buff before there's even a first strike thrown by your enemy. The fairy does have a 3-turn buff, so she will be able to at least keep the buff on your team for 1 turn. But that's still like a big disadvantage because then your skill's on cooldown, then you're just waiting to get it up, and you only had protection from that buff for 1 or 2 turns at best. So move your upon move your units into a advantageous position first, because then you're closer to your enemy. Then your enemy will be moving closer to you their next turn, and then you're just like, you're right when you're about to pretty much enter that first battle where that first strike is about to happen is when you really want to start trying to buff. I personally actually wait in with my Arendelle now. I hold on to his shield and actually use it as kind of like a heal almost. Like, I don't buff with him unless I know somebody's coming in with a heavy DPS and is going to be able to hit one of my mages. That is literally the only time I will buff on a second turn. Otherwise, I normally use Arendelle's shield on the third turn when the battle is actually in progress, because then I am getting the most out of his shield. And the same thing as with Fairy. I want to get the most out of it, so I'm going to wait until the battle is actually taking point. So when I buff, I'm getting the full advantage of those buffs out of them. Another thing is, you do not want to send your heroes into the field solo. This is mainly for your mages and your assassins, because they are both very squishy units. You do not want to have them being the first unit to cross that threshold of the grates or the trench that is in front of the stairs where you start. If you do, all it's really going to do is make it an easy target for your enemy. And if they have like a strong ranged unit, then that mage and that assassin is going to be just easy pickings. If it doesn't kill them outright with a crit hit, then they are going to be at extremely low health. So don't send your units, especially mages and assassins, into the field solo on your first team. You do want to have your DPS and your tanks in the field first. Tanks and DPS are actually okay to send into the midfield solo, because they are meant to be the ones taking the damage for your team. Okay, so the next thing I want to go over is something that came up in a couple of my a conversation in one of my comments. As you can see on the left side of the screen here, this guy tried to take advantage of one entire side of the field with his team. Now, there is 2 disadvantages to doing this. The first and foremost, I would actually say, is that by doing this, you are putting your team at a disadvantage of losing mobility, because your team's going to be tightly cornered into a small area, and then they just can't really move, because not all units have a high jump. So if you're on that high elevation, then they are at a disadvantage because they don't have that jump to actually enter the midfield at any given time. They would actually have to go back down the stairs on either side. So this is one disadvantage, is the mobility, and also close quarters. It's really going to like cramping your team, because they're the units that you need moving around the most is not going to really be able to move where they need to be moving. Another reason you do not want to do this is because in that small area, as you can see, like the very top platform is only a 4 square area. That is like a prime target for AoE nukers such as mages that have an area effect AoE that reaches over a wide area, or any other AoE nuker such as ones that use line attacks. It's easy to take advantage of your team if you go up there, which you can see I actually did on the bottom left screen, because I saw that the guy only had one AoE uh, monster, which was his token. So I was like, okay, so he wants to take this side. So I'm going to actually challenge it. So what I did is I actually took my Arendelle and I threw my Arendelle up there with him, limiting his team's mobility even more. And I kept both of my mages into the farthest reaches, so it was really hard for them to reach them. And my support stayed in the middle, so they were able to support Arendelle as well as support the mages as well. And then I just pretty much used my Fire Callius to just continuously line AoE and do his actual AoE to this team until the guy forfeited, because he eventually was like, okay, this guy's just tearing through my team, because every other turn he's hitting like 2 and 3 people. So this is why running an entire team to the sides is not advantageous, because if you're playing with somebody that knows what they're doing in a strategy type game, they're not going to match your team with their team, because you have that higher elevation advantage if you do get up there first. But they're only going to like send their tankiest unit up there, like I did, to challenge your team and force them apart while nuking them down from a safe distance with their AoE units. And lastly but not least, do not try to tank with ranged supports or mages or assassins. I didn't put assassins on this list, but I didn't think of it when I was writing it. These units, all 4 of them, need to be constantly moving, trying to get the better advantage. Ranged units, mages, and assassins really need to be moving around, trying to get that kill shot on your enemies. The mages are going to be nuking down DPS and tanks. Your ranged are going to be trying to nuke down supports and mages as well. And your assassin, he's just trying to nuke down whoever's about to die, especially supports and mages, because he's going to do increased damage to them 2 units. So alright guys, that is pretty much my tips for Arena. I hope that this does help you with your Arena capabilities. So please hit the like button and hit the subscribe button if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet. I'm putting videos out all the time, trying to do it daily. There will be some days I miss because I try to put I'm currently working on improving these videos, so I'm putting more work into them. So it does take a couple hours, per video. But other than that, I really hope that this helped you. So like I said, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and leave a comment. If you leave a comment, I will reply to your comment as soon as I see it. And thank you for watching, guys. And I shall see you again in the next video.